Hello, and welcome to a new edition of the Experts of the Americas series here at the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arch Latin America Center. My name is Wazim Maulo, where I'm the Associate Director of the Caribbean Initiative. As part of our partnership with UN Women, we are seeking ways to address gender challenges in the Caribbean across four areas, including gender-based violence, economic empowerment, political participation, and climate change. For today's conversation, we wanted to touch on women's leadership and its importance in a broader Caribbean context. To discuss this, we're joined by Professor Paloma Mohamed-Martin, Vice-Chancellor at the University of Guyana. Paloma, it was so great to see you in Guyana just a month ago for our Caribbean Gender Empowerment Forum, where we learned all about the great work that you and your university are doing to advance leadership for women and girls. Paloma has had a long and distinguished career as a specialist in social and behavioral change, specifically how communicative and cultural aspects of life are implicated in change. Paloma has written or edited 11 books in addition to publishing in several academic journals. And Paloma is the first female vice-chancellor in the history of the University of Guyana and has been educated across the United States, Harvard, and the University of West Indies. Paloma, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So Paloma,
Happy to be here.
Paloma, it's great to have you here and joining us all the way from Guyana. And really to start, we just want to open up with a broad question. Can you share a little bit of some of the gender-specific areas that the University of Guyana is working on while you have been vice-chancellor?
Oh, yeah. Very many of those. So the first thing I think would be important to note is that we have a gender and inclusion policy now and a unit that backs that up because, as you know, policies are one thing, they're good, but if you have no mechanism for enforcing them and tracking them and basically ensuring that people know about them and use them, that's, not usually very effective. So we have both. We have, of course, resuscitated our Gender Institute at the University of Guyana. And I'm happy to say that we've just got a newly minted woman who is a PhD from Arizona State University, just graduated like 3 days ago, 4 days ago. And so that institute is, back up and running. It's limped along for a while, but now it's fairly resourced. We are doing work on women and migration, a big issue now, of course, in Guyana, in general context of what's going on. And of course, we have on another side started our Early Childhood Center for Excellence, which has a daycare and special needs school in which our female and male staff can bring their children, students can bring their children. That center goes until 9 p.m. in the night. It opens at 7:30 in the morning. So it supports, good child care and allows people to study or work in a relaxed way with their children right nearby in one of the best schools and centers in the country. And of course, for me, I have two of my three DVCs, my deputy vice chancellors, are women. And that I think is remarkable also. But most importantly for me, I think that the rise of many women to vie for administrative positions in the university is something that's very heartening because usually, women are afraid of managing power and being seen to be, too aggressive and too ambitious, maybe. This is something that I don't think men have a problem with mostly, but women tend to shy away from these positions. And we're seeing more and more women coming forward as deans, as administrators of heads of departments, and so on. And finally, the number of students groups we have on campus, the clubs on campus, we now have 91 student clubs on campus, and over 60 of them are led by girls and young women. And that's really, really, I think, really very, very, very significant.
Oh, that's great to hear. Taking away from what you just mentioned is you're creating an environment for women and girls that helps hopefully set them up for success, not just starting from the top, but creating these sort of different foundations from the bottom up, and then the enforcement mechanisms, so like you talked about, that the unit that goes beyond the gender inclusion policies. So you're creating this environment, right? And in creating that environment, you're doing it for a reason, not just because you just want to do it, but because there's obviously a challenge that needs to be addressed. So can you, from your perspective, share what are some of the main challenges that women and girls are facing in Guyana right now? And through our conversations that we've had when we were meeting at the University of Guyana, we talked a lot about Indigenous and Amerindian communities as well. So if you can talk a little bit about some of the specific challenges that women and girls in those areas also face.
Yeah, so that's a double-barreled question. Let me deal with the first question first. So why are we doing this? Do you know the population of the University of Guyana, like most other post-primary institutions in the country, are predominantly composed of many, many women and girls. So for instance, at my university, while women would be occupying less than 30% of the higher administrative positions, our staff is actually about 78% women across the board, right? The student population, it's just about 70 to 30, 70% women and young women to 30% males. I believe that the ability of women to be able to, shoulder the number of responsibilities that are there and to bring their own particular lens, their own particular ways of seeing and doing things is very significant and important for society to grow. I see society as a bird with two wings, where the women and men have to work together and be equally yoked in a certain sense to be able to lift the society, which is the bird, up. And we do have a disproportionate number of women in powerful positions of authority, or if they're in positions of authority, you do not have the second layer, which is the mid-level layer that helps them to implement and actually become effective. So a lot of times women are isolated at the top as a token, like one person, right? In my particular case, I don't want that to happen at all. I don't want to be the first and last for 10 years. I'd really like to see others. And if they're, of course, deserving men, yes, definitely, they should also be given an opportunity. The problems we have in the country surrounding women is, of course, are basically the same for most countries, which is to have a disproportionate number of women in positions of authority. Although Guyana has among the highest percentages in the region in terms of how far we've come. So we're doing well, but we need to do better. They also there's the issue of jobs, the kinds of jobs that women will get, the disparity in pay, even if you're doing better. This question of having to do much more than others. The responsibility that women have for children and for the elderly now growing as a growing concern. For instance, in COVID, we saw that our grades for our girls who were doing much better in terms of academic achievement during COVID, that flipped. In one semester, that flipped because these women had to be looking after children. They were sharing devices with their children. They were distracted by having to take care of people. They're the caregivers. And I don't believe that we have in our Caribbean yet, or maybe in many parts of the world, a support system that allows women to be able to do the things that they are quote unquote responsible for, to support them in that while they're doing these other things. So that's a major thing. For the Indigenous women, this is exacerbated much more because they're now isolated. You have cultural issues with regard to how they are perceived by the wider population, but also the distance that they have to come from their native communities into Georgetown, for instance, to take up courses and programs. It's really difficult for them. They're isolated from their cultures and they really struggle. So one of the things that we have done in the university is we've created two sets of policies. One is a policy for underserved people who are trying to get into the university, because if you use a strict ranking system, they will always be mostly they'll be somewhere near the bottom, which means that they're probably not going to get in if we don't have this affirmative kind of solution for them. And the second thing we've done is that we have created a policy where we are treating them almost as if they're foreign students. So we are looking taking care of them from the first inception they show up. So whatever they need, because we understand that they have some cultural challenges. So if there is something that's wrong in their community, they just have to pick up and leave. So you have to resource them so that they can stay, so they can take care of what they need in Georgetown, as well as going forward, sending money or whatever resources back to their community so it doesn't present a hindrance and a challenge. But a very exciting thing that we're also doing, should have done it in December, but you know what was happening in Guyana. The university is opening a university in the forest, just 10 minutes from the Brazilian border, which is going to serve 21 indigenous communities. And so it means that then they'll be educated in situ where they want to and where they can, and we'll be able to more definitively work with them on the problems of their communities rather than, kind of bringing them out and then trying to send them back in, which is sometimes a problem. They're alienated from their families, their husbands. There's some particular sensitivities there with how they deal with their marital relations and those kinds of things. So I think 2024 is going to be a really exciting year for us being able to address these kinds of things and more comprehensively. Right now, all of these are very nascent, new policies and ideas, and we have to see how they will play in the real world.
Paloma, thank you for that answer. I think of course, you discussed a lot of the challenges, but for every challenge you discussed, you had a solution in mind, which I think is that sort of solution-oriented mindset that you're bringing to the University of Guyana and to a lot of these challenges, I think is really what's going to help move the needle, right? Of course, change does not happen overnight, and a lot of these things have to be implanted today in order to see it bear fruit maybe 10 years down the line. So congratulations to a lot of the work that you're doing. And also, please count on the Atlantic Council and our work, right? Not just our work with UN Women, but writ large across the Caribbean to support your efforts and the efforts of the university itself. So just want to wrap up with a final question. And given they've talked a lot about the challenges, you've talked a lot about the solutions, a big part of this, as part of our UN Women work, is shaping some of the social norms, right? And the perceptions of women and girls across the Caribbean and how that might contribute to some of the challenges we've talked about over the past 6 to 8 months. So we'd love to hear from you in closing, on why women leadership is so important and your own message to women and girls in Guyana and across the Caribbean.
Yeah. I think leadership in general is important. Leadership in general is important, but the literature coming out of, I would say, even more specifically, the COVID period in which a lot of women were thrust into these situations where they had to really lead in a very bleak global context, we began to see that they seem to be making decisions in a very different way. They seem to be much more inclusive, much less prone to, I would say, egotistical ways of seeing the world. They are much more, might be much more compassionate, but they're also much more stringent in many, many ways. I think women are excellent at budgeting. It's one of the things of the successes of my own leadership, which has surprised many people, because they expect you not to be able to deal with the heavy financial issues and solving those problems. I think women are natural problem solvers as well. So this mindset that you see where it's okay, so this is the challenge, what do we do? It's not, this is a challenge, let's describe it and then go away and kick the ball down the road. No. So I think that all of those kinds of special skills and orientations, values and attitudes that women might have are good for a world in which you have complex problems, especially a Caribbean region, which might sometimes be a little short on decision-making, solutions, and futuristic thinking. This is a very important thing because we have to be able to really predict the future and to be able to pull resilience out of wherever we could find it, to be able to overcome what's with us now and what is likely to come. So that's one of the things. If my particular message would be to women and girls and to the men who support them, because I want to say that a lot of my own journey has been because men have pushed me, have said, why do you think you can't do this? Or why don't you try this? And they've supported in many regards. In other regards, I've had to compete with men. And that has been quite terrifying. But the more you succeed, the more you realize that this is possible. But you just have to be on your game. So it can't be any kind of chance thing. It has to be strategic and planned and very focused. So for any woman and girl who wants to lead or thinks that they might have a problem that they want to solve, because that's how I end up in leadership. I don't say that I want to lead. I am a problem solver. I'm a change maker. That's my specialty and my discipline. And so I end up leading sometimes if I think I can change something or make a difference. So if you want to make a difference, step up, think about it, be intentional, work hard, be disciplined, but know that you can. And also know that if you don't happen to succeed in the first instance, that does not mean that you should not proceed. It means that you just need to introspect and look at what you've done and how you've done it, and then come back again. So you don't give up, you focus. And I am here to say to you that just as I have women who mentored me and who said to me, Paloma, women are afraid of managing power. Do not be afraid of managing power, but do not go after power for itself. Do something because there's a need and you feel that you can fill that need best, and then you'll succeed.
Well, thank you, Paloma. Those are incredibly wise and helpful words. And I know that it'll reach a lot of people, not just in Guyana, not just in the Caribbean, but using our global reach at the Atlantic Council to people all across the world. So thank you so much for that message. Thank you so much for your time and for all the work that you're doing at the University of Guyana. I am very confident to say that in 10 years from now, we're going to see a lot of change as a result of many things you're doing right now. So once again, thank you so much. And please count on us at the Atlantic Council as a partner.
Yes, thank you. And the last thing, get an education. I should have said that. That's like a given. Let me just say that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thanks, Paloma.